Welcome everyone to Mail Fuzz TV. I am Peter, and today I'm going to be talking about 1899 episode 5. It is called The Calling. So full spoilers for the episode. And this one is just all like mythology, mystery, like stuff. Like so much happens in this episode, and it's fairly streamlined. It doesn't really focus on character drama. There's little bits of it, of course, as things are happening, as you'd expect. But it's all just wild stuff, you know, like each episode up until this point has ended with a big what the hell science fiction-y type moment. This episode has like, you know, at least a half dozen of them throughout the episode. We're kind of really getting to the truth to some extent of what's going on. You know, very early on we started talking about this not being real, it being a simulation of some kind, some sort of shared dream or whatever. Some kind of experiment. In fact, that word experiment is even used in the episode when Maura's theorizing what's going on. So I watched that a second time. I took some notes. I could have gotten this review out yesterday, but I thought it was worth watching a second time and actually noting down all of the key things that I thought were worth mentioning, because I was worried that I was going to miss something. So we kind of start with a dream again, in that Maura is outside where there's a grave and it's near the asylum building, but you know, once again she wakes up. The voice, the only thing I really wanted to note here is that the voice is sounding more and more like hers. It's starting to sound like hers is the voice that's actually waking not only her but everyone else up. I don't really know what to make of that as of yet. Other than if she's also trying to like break out of this cycle, and I'm saying the word cycle based on things that come later in the episode, which it being a cycle is not surprising to me, but certainly, like, you know, this episode really started to hit that home, and the idea that like the Prometheus was the same characters just keep going to a new ship. Maybe over and over again. We don't know how many times this has happened, but I'll talk about the evidence for that as we go. So we see the machine power up in the engine room. Seemingly it's getting ready for all the things that are coming in this episode, because it seems to be responsible for the mass suicide that's going to take place. But things to note is that the alarm that goes off, which obviously is not really part of the ship, you know, no one who works on the ship recognizes this alarm. It's this klaxon going off. That happens after the big time freeze moment. So the boy's been locked back in the cupboard that he came out of, because everyone's scared of him because they all saw him die and they're like weirded out by it, so no one wants to let him out. And it's when Tove, how do you pronounce the name, when she sort of is defected and comes in because she doesn't like the way that her mother and the other side are doing things, mainly because they're talking about killing more people so they don't get in trouble for mutiny when they arrive at their destination. So again, it's the mothers doing we must survive at all costs, sacrifices if they're needed must be. But she, you know, as we talked about last episode, Tove is kind of one of the better, more morally correct, or at least likable characters. And she joins the main group, and it's when this happens that Maura goes over to let the kid out, and everyone is so adamant that they don't do it, that they bring up their guns, and at least one person fires a shot, and notably Daniel, the stranger, is ready to leap and take the bullet. Like, he's running to take the bullet. But then time freezes. Like, you know, when the bullet slows down, you see sort of the ripple in the air, and Maura looks at everyone and sort of slowly walks over to the bullet and just sort of plucks it out of the air. It makes a little sort of dent in the wave that the bullet's made, and just kind of looks at it and speculates, probably correctly, that the pyramid that the kid's holding is the device that did this. And so obviously this is a huge big moment. Like, now after, you know, the boy coming back at the end of the last episode, I said that was kind of a turning point, in that this is the characters witnessing something just outright science fiction or supernatural, and as a result, it's full throttle now. It's full steam ahead. And I'm not using ship terms intentionally, but they work in the moment, so I'm going for it. So I think that's why it makes sense that we're kind of accelerating this stuff in this episode, and it does really accelerate here. So they just walk out, and then time starts to move again. So from the perspective of everyone else that was there, they've just vanished. They've just disappeared. The door's suddenly open, so the boy's not there, and she's gone. Like, what the hell's just happened? And this leads to where we're going. But anyway, so all this happens. It's notably right after this that the alarm starts going off, which ties into something that Daniel says to the boy later, which is, "You shouldn't have done that. He knows we're here now." So it does seem like this act, this like manipulation of the world with this pyramid, has alerted whoever's in control, probably Maura's father, Henry. Whoever's in control is now aware that these I don't even know what to call them, but like Daniel and the boy like clearly are trying to work against whatever this system is, and are trying to break them out of it. In fact, maybe the most interesting scene of the whole episode is when Daniel talks to the boy, and he says that thing about, "You shouldn't have done that, he knows we're here now." And then the kid says, who speaks in this episode for the first time, "We've never made it this far, maybe it'll work this time." So obviously that was kind of your first big confirmation there's a cycle going on here where they've done this multiple times. And it also kind of like retroactively makes you look at certain scenes before. Like I think there was an implication that Daniel killed Ada, back when that happened. But as we've went on past that, and we could have even said this last episode, that he's not going around killing all these people that are turning up dead. It doesn't feel like it anyway. There's too many of them. So we could have already maybe ruled that out. But as it is right now, it kind of feels like maybe he just knows that she's the first victim because she's always the first victim. That's a really interesting thing to think about. So it's not so much that he, it was trying to give us the red herring that he's a villain. In reality, he's the one trying to break everyone out, and he's probably the brother. Who later on we hear the brother's name. Maybe we heard this in the first episode, but I think Kieran is what Maura called the brother later on. But then the kid also says she didn't remember. So clearly, again, something we've been thinking since episode 1 is that at least Maura, if not others, have had their minds wiped. And they all have, technically. If they're in a loop and they're doing this over and over again, then they're all getting their minds wiped every single time. It also brings that thing I was saying back in episode 1 about, I wasn't sure originally if that scene at the start with her being dragged into the room behind the door and put in the chair, if that was actually set before or after the story. Now, I think technically it is before, because it's a memory of what's happened between loops, or maybe before the loop started. But in a way, you could argue that in any given loop, that could also be after the loop as well. But I do think it is technically the past for her perspective. It is the past. But it is interesting that because it's repeating, that in theory it could happen again. Although now that because this is the version that we're seeing as the audience, this is where the story is going to change and evolve. It might not happen again. They might change things enough to break out of it, or at least alter it enough that it can't just reset. And if it does reset, that's a very interesting path forward for the show, because then we start again. But now we do things differently because maybe there's a couple of characters who remember and things play out differently. That could be a fun thing to explore. All these options. But yeah, Daniel clearly knows though, because he says here in this same scene when he's talking to the kid that I need to stop this before they sink the ship, and he tells the boy to stay hidden in where he is, which is, I should go back and explain where they are for this conversation, but clearly Daniel knows that they're effectively hitting some kind of kill switch, right? Whether it's the creators, whether it's Sebastian sending the messages out, we see where his messages go towards the end, and it's still, there's still thoughts to be had about him, but clearly they're trying to flip this kill switch, which ultimately is going to make all of the characters start to commit suicide. It seems selective at first, although I do wonder if eventually it would have come for all of them, and it just happens to be most of our main characters who are unaffected when it's turned off at the end, because Daniel does eventually succeed in turning it off. Or, is there some that were always intended to stay away? Because Virginia, it looks like when they go on deck at the end of the episode, Virginia looks like she was about to jump. Like it was turned off just in time to stop her. Pardon me. So That's very fascinating. So yeah. So where they are. So the shafts in the rooms. The shaft in the room. The boy takes Mara down her shaft. That sounds weird. And uses the beetle to open a door in the tiles. It kind of, we see it later on more head on, where you see all the bricks kind of like move out the way, and it's very, again, very, sci-fi and whatever. And it creates, this tunnel. Which made me think of Dark, actually. There was a lot of crawling through cave tunnels in Dark with its science fiction concept, and I couldn't help but think, especially later on when the captain, who the actor was in Dark, doing some of this crawling with the lantern. It made me think of that a lot. But it kind of creates, like, the exit of the tunnel is just like floating in midair, where this grave was from the dream at the start of the episode, or this memory from the start of the episode, and the asylum's just over there. And likewise, when Mora takes the captain down his shaft, again, that sounds weird, it takes him to his memory, his dream that we've been seeing, the burned house. So if other people have these shafts in their rooms, you would assume that they lead to their own memories, that Yingli's would lead to maybe the docks where the boat was, where she killed her friend accidentally, or so on and so on. That makes some sense. So he tells the boy to hide in here, right? And maybe this is a good hiding spot for whatever reason, for however this works. Maybe this is a good hiding spot for him, because the ending does tell us that, and I assume this is the quote unquote creator, because that's something the boy says to Mara. He writes down first, he doesn't say anything, he just says they are listening, which maybe implies who's running this thing, and then actually says out loud, whispers to her, you'll have to ask the creator, presumably meaning the father. And she gets a chance to do that, kind of, where she goes into the asylum and she sees, like, her father. She's like, this can't be real, this isn't happening. Asks where her brother is, and all the father says is, where is it, where did you hide it? Is he looking specifically, because we know later on he wants the boy. Is he talking about the boy in this scene, or is he talking about the pyramid? Is the boy not really a boy, and that's why he says it in this scene? That's possible. But he also says to her, you're not asking the right questions, almost like he's disappointed that she's failed the experiment because she's not prodding at the right thing. Which does lead to an interesting idea here, is like, what is the purpose of this experiment? Because it seems like he wants the boy, and that things aren't going the way they want them to, because the boy and Daniel are messing with things and trying to, like, break them out of the cycle or mess up the experiment. But at the same time, him saying you're not asking the right questions, also to me, that sounds like to me that he wants a result from this experiment as well. It seems like there was an experiment with a purpose, and now because there's these, like, rogue elements in Daniel and the boy messing it up, he wants them to be dealt with, presumably so that he can then continue the experiments unaffected by their tampering. That's kind of where my mind is with this. But yeah, there's so much stuff here. This is why I went back and watched it all again, because there were so many little lines of dialogue that just hinted at things that felt like it was needed to go into detail. Along the way, Sebastian sends another message out with the triangle buttons. They get a message saying sink ship again. Obviously at this point I immediately think they're not talking about the Prometheus, especially since it's not there anymore. They're talking about the ship they're on, especially with everyone jumping overboard. This is the kill switch again kind of idea. So yeah, Mara, when she runs into the captain, explains who she is, that Henry Singleton is her father, and that she believed her brother was on the Prometheus because he went missing at the docks that she was supposed to meet him at, and that's where the ship left from. But she kind of, like, thinks she was a doctor in a mental hospital, but her father's, like, altered her memory to make her think that she was a patient. That's what she's theorizing right now, and who knows, maybe she's wrong. Maybe she was a patient. maybe that's why she's a candidate. Maybe they're all patients, and that's why they're all in this, thing, whatever, this simulation, this experiment, whatever it is. But yeah, all of this is interesting. But she even theorizes that these people who are jumping off the side of the boat, which, by the way, I've kind of glossed over that part of it. I really liked all these scenes. They were really effective. Like, all these people started walking, and all of a sudden, this divide that was created between the two parties. Because I was actually quite excited at the start of the episode, thinking, oh, we've got like these two factions on the ship now. One headed by Franz and the crazy religious mother, the other by the captain and Mara and co. So we've got our good team and our bad team, and maybe we're going to get like kind of like almost a war on the ship for control. Like, that seemed kind of like a fun idea, but it's almost thrown out the window immediately, because when all these people just start walking like zombies up to the deck and throwing themselves over, like, it's actually quite nice to even see Franz like trying really hard to like hold someone back, and then realizing that he can't, that nothing he can do to stop them. And it kind of brings the humanity back out in some characters where Angel seems really scared. Ramiro eventually gets back to him and like sort of is kind of loving with him again and wants to protect him. Jerome goes to tie up Clemens and even Lucian to save them, and ties up himself, thinking, oh, this might be contagious. We might eventually start doing this, like the people that are doing it now are. So a lot of people are tying themselves up. Crester's mother even like shows some like heartache when she finds out he's dead, which, given last episode she said she wished he died instead of his sister, is kind of a notable turn. Maybe she's realizing that was a shitty thing to say, and now she has deep regrets. But I love the big wide shot of all the bodies. It's CG, but it was a pretty nice CG shot of all the bodies. But I especially like the shot, I think it's inside Clemency's cabin, where you just see the body go past the window. I thought that was a really nice dark thing, and they do this there's just enough of like notable characters dying to make it feel like it's not just the red shirts, because you've got Crester, who's kind of the big one. The first one that's really notable is Yingli's mother, and some of these characters witness their loved one's death. Yingli ends up with Oleg, and that's kind of touching because he seems to want to protect her even though he can't understand the words she's saying. You've got some human connections kind of like rekindling or kindling potentially for the first time by the end of the episode, which is nice. And Lucian basically says that he is in love with Clemens, and it breaks his heart because he's dying and he can't do anything about it. So I'm kind of rushing all that to get to the point that I was going to make, which I've what was I going to say? I felt like I started that point so long ago, forgot what I was going to get to. I'm sure I will in a minute because I've got all these notes written down. Sebastian's got a slider tool. Let's talk about that. She's got a... Sorry, that's she. He's got a slider device just like Crester. It makes me wonder if Crester stole that from Sebastian in a previous loop, or Sebastian's equivalent. Because if Sebastian's like a real person in there, as like a mole for the father, for the creator, we'll call him, sending out messages, which we know that's where the messages are going, and his goal is to get the boy. It does, make me second guess and think about everything he does and says to other people now, because like when he's saying at the end, oh, they've sent us this message to sink the ship, like, why is he telling them that unless he thinks that the panic over like these instructions is going to lead somehow to him getting his hands on the boy to fulfill his mission? So I feel like there's some sort of like mind games and like some 4D chess perhaps going on with like what he's choosing to share with others. But we see both him and Daniel like just make someone pass out. So clearly with this device they can like turn off or just make people collapse that are on the ship, like they're video game characters just being turned off, which does make some sense when you think about this device. If this device is making them like walk and just jump overboard, it makes sense that that's kind of what its main purpose is to control all the people on the boat. Part of me thought at first, when it was only mostly like the background characters that were jumping, or maybe they're not the real people and all the real people can't be controlled like that. It could still go that way, but I think the ending with Virginia almost going over but still being there afterwards makes me think it might not be the case. Maybe it just happens to be this group that were ultimately left at the end. I could be wrong though there. If they end up telling me these are the real people and everyone else was like an NPC in a video game, then I'll accept that as well, because I think there's enough there to maybe speculate on that. So all super interesting stuff. All very good. Whilst Mara and the captain are talking about all this backstory stuff, he also brings up that his signature's on the Prometheus passenger list, and that's where he says, "I think I was the captain of that ship." Again, that's kind of where I'm getting this. Like, this was just all the same people on that ship, and it all went badly, and it's just going to keep looping to a different ship each time, and who knows how many. I don't know if Prometheus and Cerberus like have any kind of numerical value in any way, shape, or form, or any kind of sequence value where you could sort of like say how many iterations there have been of this. But if anyone knows the mythology and stuff that these words come from, by all means, chime in with some thoughts on that. But Daniel's able to shut down the machine, and our remaining characters kind of assemble on the deck at the end, with the realization that the company wants them to sink this ship. But at this point, even Mara is saying that she doesn't believe. This is what I was going to say earlier, actually. This is why I was explaining all the jumping overboard. Mara isn't even convinced that everyone's really dying, which is kind of where I think the audience are at this point. I don't necessarily believe that we've seen the last of Cresta, or some of these other characters. I think we'll even see Ada again, the little girl, because I don't think this is all permanent. I think this is all leading to a second cycle, or well, even over a second. We're at least on the second. In fact, we're at least on several, because of the way the boy said maybe it'll work this time. We've never gotten this far, which is interesting, because it's like, okay, so how quickly did it end the previous times, and how quickly did it end? Does it always break down into a war on the ship, and they end up sinking it, or does it end completely different ways every time? A lot of ideas here. So yeah, we see at the end, our big scene at the end of the episode is Henry, and he gets the message. It's all triangles, and he says he's running out of time. Tell him to get me the boy. And you can if you're looking around the room, you can see where the TV screens were where he was watching stuff before at the end of episode 2. The technology in the room feels very 70s, and it's funny because I remember there's a comment back in one of the first reviews about the music feeling inappropriate because it's all from like the 70s, and I feel like the technology here feels very 70s-esque, so I think the music's actually very intentional. It's a very intentional hint of the time period we're actually in. It seems like we might be in the 70s in this show, and that the 1899 is just a simulation. Which is very interesting, although it does make me, I want to just correct something from last review. I just threw out, without thinking about it, I said that Jerome and Lucian were in World War One, which is complete nonsense, because World War One hadn't happened yet. So that was just me having a brain fart and forgetting that the show is meant to be in 1899. But part of that, of course, is that it's really not in 1899. It's much later, probably the 70s, given the ending of the episode. So, and that's quite fascinating. Which actually, one of my favorite little moments of the episode, just for fun, was when Daniel's going down to like interact with the device to try and turn it off to save everyone or stop the simulation ending too early, or restart. In fact, he even says if I don't do this, everything will start again. He says something like that. But so the guy who, one of the two coal guys who was talking about the wolves and stuff, and his friend walked away earlier on, the one with the garlic, went overboard earlier on in the episode, and the guy's like asking questions, and Daniel just pulls out a torch or a flashlight for the Americans, like it's nothing. He has this bit of tech on him. We don't even think of that as technology, but yeah, in 1898 it's technology. It's pretty advanced technology, and he's like, "What's that?" So I really like that. He also says it about the slider device thing as well, but I mean the first one was by far funnier though, just because it was just a torch. But I really like that. But yeah, he makes him pass out with the device, and then we see it again later on with Sebastian. So yeah, almost this entire episode was the puzzle, the mystery, the science fiction stuff happening, whether it was making all the passengers jump overboard. And that was a really fun segment of the episode, because you had all these characters trying to hold people back, and then ultimately realizing they had to tie each other up just in case they became infected with whatever this mind sickness is. And seeing some remorse from Cresta's mother was kind of nice. Maybe she is a little bit human after all. That's always good. But yeah, so yeah, that's really like the episode. Like, it's funny how streamlined the show has become. This episode and last episode, it feels like everything's been a lot more focused on like one singular through line, more or less, because like all the pieces have been put in in play, the puzzle board's set up, and now we can really kind of play with what's going on. And I think the fact that we're already getting to this idea, and right, the one thing I've not said yet is at the end of the episode, the last thing we see is Henry looking out of his window. He opens the curtains, and there's a giant version of the pyramid, this black pyramid, just there, in the landscape, wherever this is. You assume maybe this is the same mental hospital from the stuff, but honestly, like, the weather looks so bad that if you told me this was like an alien world they're on, I wouldn't like argue with you. Like, it could be, maybe they're on a different planet. I don't know. I don't actually think that, but it seemed like a very hostile environment as far as the weather was going. Maybe it's just a bad day. But it makes me wonder if there's someone super secret. If it doesn't seem like they're just in the countryside of England or something like that. It feels like they're on like some mysterious island somewhere, which maybe makes me think of Lost now that I'm saying that. But just this like weird alien pyramid or whatever it is, because Morris says that her father was always into like studying the mind and studying like how it works and what people will do and things like that. But it also feels like did he build this pyramid? Because this feels like something that he found. It feels like either an alien device or something that he's maybe using to do his research, but he's also kind of trying to figure out what this stuff is, or maybe not. Maybe he did build it. I don't know. It's kind of hard to say at this point, but it's very curious. It also maybe explains like how they're because if it is the 70s. Yeah, they've got these TV screens. You can see the computers with the tape, the spinning and all that in the background. Obviously, 70s technology, it's hard to believe that you could do this type of like either shared consciousness or simulation with computers at the time. Maybe the pyramid is the sort of the advanced technology that's letting it all happen. And if that's the case, then what is it? Where did it come from? Was it already here and it was found? These are all very important questions. So yeah, needless to say, it was a very entertaining episode that provoked the mystery parts of my brain quite a bit. So very good stuff. Yeah, just a little thing I liked as well. I talked last episode about how much Jerome was kind of this like nice, like heroic character. I liked it in this episode. He's like tying up Clemens, and for a second I was like, oh, why is he tying her up? And then I'm like, oh, because this is the plan, to tie himself and everyone else up to, so that they don't walk overboard. He's actually, the fact that he tied up Lucian is actually kind of like, again, another kind of a little heroic act, despite the fact that he probably hates his guts for very obvious reasons. So no, very nice. Liked the episode a lot. Looking forward to the next one. So let me know what you thought of episode 5 of 1899 in the comments below. Any little tidbits that I didn't bring up, either because I either missed or just forgot to bring them up, let me know in the comments, and I will see you guys next time. You can support all the content by going over to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and support us for as little as $1 or so per month. And of course you can hit the super thanks button or like, subscribe, ding the bell for notifications. All those things do help a lot. So thank you very much for joining. It is always a pleasure. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?